Why watch Annihilation or Game Night? Or even rewatch Black Panther? Let's go watch The Vanishing of Sidney Hall instead, guys. We're gonna do a reasons to see and reasons not to see movie review of this film that we went to I think it was the premiere. John and I walked the red carpet and we had no idea we were going to.
Red carpet at the ArcLight.
We were on our way to go inside the theater and then someone pulled us aside and said, wait, we're supposed to bring you on the carpet. And we were both like, really? What? Why? Who are we?
If you want to scour the Getty Images archive, I'm sure we're in there somewhere.
And before going into this, I want to give a thanks to Jason Dolan, who's actually one of the co-writers of this film.
Yeah.
Flat out told me beforehand in a text message that if we didn't like this, he'd be more than okay with us saying we don't like it. And when someone gives that door open, I am more than willing to be like, yeah, I had issues with your film, man. Reason to see, number uno, Logan Lerman and Elle Fanning. Before going into this review, we should probably give a little bit of a setup of what the movie's all about. And if you haven't seen the trailer, The Vanishing of Sidney Hall takes place over the course of 3 different timelines all around this one guy named Sidney Hall, who's played by Logan Lerman.
Yeah, and you're checking in with him at age 18, 24, and 30.
So 18 at the end of high school, of what's pretty much putting him on a path to writing a great book. The second storyline is him post-fame.
Successful author.
And then the third one is more of Kyle Chandler's story where he's looking for Sidney Hall because he's vanished. He was this big, huge author who's gone disappearing for the past 5 years. So you're intercutting between all 3 stories here and you're hopping around 3 different timelines. And there's also like a mystery unraveling as to what led to this book and why exactly did Sidney disappear, and there's a lot of other mystery questions being set up as well.
Kind of reminded me of like a David Foster Wallace-esque type of thing, but with a mystery and an atypical plot structure put on top of it. And Logan Lerman, I mean, is terrific in the center of this.
Because you see Logan Lerman at 3 different phases in this guy's life. Each phase, he is just as believable as the next. Very often, when you get an older guy to be a high schooler, it's already not that believable, but this dude looks like a kid in the movie. We gotta meet him in real life. In real life, he doesn't look like a little kid, but in the film, he looks like a high schooler, and he feels like a high schooler. Each different stage of this guy's life, he's a different person at that time. And each time we hop around time with this dude, he is so believable in it. When he's in high school, when he is post-fame and who he's become at that point. Even in the vanishing point where you finally get to meet him, where he's like all bearded out and whatever. Even there, I was like, I don't know if I'm gonna believe this because I don't know if I could buy this. But when he starts to get lines, when he starts to get scenes in that performance, you're like, oh, never mind. He is just as believable.
Yeah, when we finally reconnect with him in that third story, I was very surprised by how his mannerisms and even his voice, just everything about his performance really brought this whole life together. And that was something I just wasn't expecting to be blown away by in this movie. Like, he does a really great job in every, like you said, in every stage of the role. And Elle Fanning, too, compliments him really, really well. They have this romance that grows, that starts in the beginning in his high school life and kind of grows to affect every story moving on. Don't want to say too much about how, but each story, their relationship is different.
You do see her in the adult years of Sidney Hall's life as well.
Yeah.
And when she's an adult and when she's a kid, same thing. Like, wow, you are so believable in both of these roles. I'm really curious as to how they directed this film, because with these time lapses between these guys and the fact that they're so damn believable and their chemistry is undeniably great. Those 2 performances alone, I think, absolutely make this movie worth watching. It's called The Vanishing of Sidney Hall, and how's the guy who plays Sidney Hall? He's amazing. He's so amazing. I think prior to watching this movie, if I saw Logan Lerman around, I either wouldn't have cared to approach him or wouldn't have been nervous to approach him, but I thought he was so good in this movie that I got really nervous to go up to him. It's a good thing he grabbed my ass when we were taking that photo.
Oh yeah, that's where that smile came from.
I want to put that out there, He was straight up doing it. No, he wasn't.
Reason to see number dos, the supporting cast. There is a supporting cast in this movie. Everybody in this movie is really terrific, and that's another one of those things I was kind of surprised by, is everyone's so natural and everyone's so genuine.
Well, you got Kyle Chandler's role, who is like this cop looking for Sidney Hall, or like a private eye. You're not really sure who he is. He's in like the future storyline, going for the vanishing Sidney Hall. And Kyle Chandler's just great in general, and in this role he does elevate it, and there's some damn good scenes with him in it, man. One of my favorite scenes is with the guy, actually. Nathan Lane plays Sidney Hall's publisher, and he's really funny in the role. He's probably the only comedic character in this film.
Yeah, who's just flat out there to kind of make you chuckle.
And Blake Jenner is in Sidney Hall's high school story.
Yeah.
And he's like this bully who needs Sidney Hall's help, can't give too much away. And at first I was like, oh God, what a cliche bully. And then after a while, the character gets to evolve, and you do see why they got an actor like Blake Jenner to be in this movie. I met him last night. I don't know how to say his name. Yahya
Abdul Mateen II.
Yahya Abdul Mateen. He plays this teacher at Sidney Hall's high school who takes a big liking and really that teacher has a lot of faith in Sidney Hall and his writing abilities. The thing I told the actor when I met him was, you give such a sincere performance. What I found so impressive about it is usually these kind of roles I can find a little creepy because it's that teacher who's really taking a liking to a student.
Yeah.
But I realized that there's scenes in this movie where not one thought in my head popped up like, this is a little weird to me.
Yeah, it's just he has a genuine grip on exactly what that role should be. Like, he's warm, but he's also clearly a bit of an authority figure. He's not too chummy, but at the same time, I don't know, I just love watching that guy.
And also, Michelle Monaghan's in this film. She's not really utilized all that much. Like, her character is an important effect on Sidney Hall's character because she's Sidney Hall's mom. And she's not really in the film, honestly, probably not till like the last 30-40 minutes of the film where she actually gets some scene work to do.
Yeah, when she really gets to shine is later.
And it was really fascinating to see her in this role because I'm used to Michelle Monaghan usually being love interest character, something like MI3 for Tom Cruise or The Heartbreak Kid with Ben Stiller, you know, like those kind of roles. And this is a very, very mature role for her. She sells it, man, because she's a pretty intimidating character in this movie, man.
Definitely.
Reason to see number 3. The writing and structure. I think the most impressive thing about this, because we know the co-writer of the film, right when the movie was done, I went up to him like, how the did you write this movie? At first, it's a little hard to adjust to. I think I looked over at John like 10 minutes in the film and go, there's a lot of time lapses in here. And then I realized, oh, we're watching 3 different timelines right now of the same guy. The way they intertwine all these different storylines in a way that becomes fluid, especially towards the end of the movie, because you're not just watching 3 stories. As you cut back and forth between the stories, you're also unraveling a mystery.
Yeah.
And each time something is brought up as a question, a mystery is unveiled, or another question's brought up when you cut back to a different timeline. And there's a lot of intercutting going on. Eventually, when you adjust to it, you're like, this is actually done really well. I think the structure of this film is very impressive and super hard to accomplish. That's why we made sure to point out here that the structure alone, like the outline on this baby, is super impressive.
Yeah, it would make me curious to see all the different drafts and stuff because it does do a good job of hopping between 3 different timelines. And once you are adjusted to it, you know, it does kind of accentuate the mystery of all that, the cause and effect of everything, and learning which little details are going to come back and why. I feel like they did a pretty subtle job of most of that. There's not a lot of like, look at this object, it's gonna come back. No, you know?
Reasons not to see. First half is a little bumpy. Okay, so the first half of this film was really where like my main issues actually lie. One thing that I kept noticing is the editing choices were really off to me. Like the writing and structure is great. The cinematography itself is actually pretty good too.
It kind of gets better as the movie goes, I feel like.
Yeah, it's just the way the editing is done. I think especially in the first half of the film, it's a little over edited, and just the scenes alone. There's a little too much cutting around. I feel like there are some shots where they could have just let the camera roll or let this take just go on, but there's a lot of like, let's cut to a close-up of Nathan Lane, then a 2-shot of Logan Lerman talking, then close-up of Nathan Lane, 2-shot. And it's like that editing I found a little uneven and rather choppy in the first half of it. The time lapses and the time jumps do take a little bit of adjusting to. I wish there was a little bit of a Dunkirk thing where it at least says like week 1 or like this time so we can really know where we're hopping into at this time.
It is kind of up to you to understand that messy hair equals high school, glasses and a haircut equals author, and from me to and giant beard equals later. And eventually when also the movie starts to focus on the 3 storylines in a little bit more of an even keel, the first part of the movie you are kind of focusing on the young story and the middle story, and then the later story comes in further into the movie in a focal way.
Yeah, so that's what's cool about the structure to it. But the thing with the first half too is that in the first half you do focus on all 3 storylines. I wasn't as pulled into post-fame storyline and Vanishing Sidney Hall storyline until halfway through the
later.
movie. Yeah, it was probably like a solid halfway point.
When you get a better view of the situation, you start to realize the impacts of certain decisions that you've seen already and where certain things might be leading. The later storylines do get a bit more grabby.
But the high school storyline is thoroughly interesting from beginning to end. It opens up the movie in a really funny way, actually.
Yeah.
And throughout the entire film, the high school storyline is easily my favorite part of this movie because that was easily the most gripping part.
Reason not to see number 2, drawn out finale.
And might I add, heavy finale. This is when
It's a heavy movie.
This is when the finale. It's one of those indie drama films where you're like, okay.
Yeah.
This is an indie drama now. Where it's just a lot of depressing shit just keeps piling on top. But it needs to at the same time. That's the weird part about it.
There is a degree, I guess you could argue, that after a certain point, you're like, every opportunity for something terrible to happen is taken.
It's like all the worst things just keep happening and like this non-stop effect where I felt like they could have kind of spaced it out a little bit in the last half of the movie instead of compacting it all into the finale. However, I will say that they don't leave any question a mystery answer. They answer everything because there's a lot of questions and a lot of mystery being laid out throughout this film that at times when they decided to answer something, I was like, oh yeah, I forgot about that. Very important plot thing.
Yeah, so you
need to answer that.
It does kind of do that Lord of the Rings thing where you're like, oh yeah, we got to wrap this up, and then we got to wrap that up, and then we got to wrap that up. So there are some times where you're like, oh, it's still going.
But that would be our opinion because like in the finale, there's specific moments in it. Cause like I said, there's 3 storylines. There's specific moments. I could just hear a lot of people crying.
Oh yeah.
There's a lot of people crying at some stuff. It's a lot of heavy ass crap. The thing with me though, as a viewer, I get to a point where if it's like non-stop heaviness, I don't really get to a tear-filled moment. I'm just like, okay, now I'm just bummed.
Yeah, for sure. There was a certain element I could have maybe used a little bit more laughter or something.
Yeah.
There's at least one good scene in here where 2 characters like start cracking up together, and that reminded me of something like of that warmth that would have maybe added a bit more of a contrast if there had been a little bit more of that throughout or something, because it is a very heavy movie. Like, it's a very heavy movie.
Well, I feel like the last like 30 minutes of this movie might make you forget about some of the humorous parts of it, because there's a lot of humor with Nathan Lane. There's humorous parts, especially with Elle Fanning. There's a lot of humorous parts in the high school time, just in like the opening scene and the way Logan Lerman's character is. There's humor in it. It's just when there's so much heaviness, you kind of forget about those lighter parts. And I get your point, because in order for me to get moved to like a really emotional sad point, I'm like, well, I need the contrast.
Contrast of life.
Yeah.
It's hard to argue because you are watching a character with a pretty difficult life he's been handed, with a lot of coming into contact with people who are going through a lot of really rough things, and there is so much heavy subject matter that they touch that, you know, I mean, I get that a life is this, that can be this way.
Yeah, because a lot of the themes kind of remind me of Place Beyond the Pines in terms of like you got 3 storylines, except you're not just one storyline at a time, you're intercutting, and a lot of the themes deal with choices and consequences. What's behind the curtain, really? Things like that. I love those kinds of themes in a movie. I appreciated it, but the finale is a little over bloated, and while it's intermittent, like some stuff is really like, whoa, and then other stuff is, wow, this is just really sad. Yeah. In conclusion, I would say that the performances alone and the impressive structure of this film, the way it's all done, it makes it worth alone. If anything, if you don't even care about the writing and structure, it's the performances, especially Logan Lerman and Elle Fanning. They're the main reasons I think you should check this movie out. It's something that I hope gets recognized.
I mean, I've seen a couple reviews in for this, and they've not been incredibly friendly, and I was a little confused by that watching the movie, because I think there is so much good work in this movie. I mean, there are a lot of moments of really terrific writing.
I can't think of one bad performance.
Even if not every moment hits you, there are a lot of sequences, moments, scenes that are very poignant, very resonant. I feel like this movie might have done better when they wrote it 10 years ago or so. You know, I feel like now might be a little late for this kind of thing. It's a very masculine movie. It is a very male myth kind of movie. That being said, though, there is a lot that's affecting about it. And like I said, there's just so much good work on display here that it is worth checking out, especially if you are just a person who enjoys a drama.
That's why we do this pros and cons list, people, because in conclusion, with our rating, we will say there are more reasons to see The Vanishing of Sidney Hall than reasons not to see. So by all means, go check it out. All right, guys. Well, did you not see The Vanishing of Sidney Hall? I don't think you have yet. You should go check it out. Would you go looking for Logan Lerman if he went missing for a few years? I certainly would. He has my number. Slip it into his pocket. Yeah, it's huge what he had. Okay. You guys can subscribe to The Real Rejects. Click that notification bell to get notified every time one of our videos is up. And go check out our Patreon. Weekly Q&As, full-length music video reactions, and TV show reactions over there. A bunch of good stuff over there, so check it out.